Adrian Cole strode through the private terminal, his tailored suit crisp, shoes clicking against the marble floor. He glanced at his watch, precise, calculated, always on time. The world knew him as a billionaire real estate mogul, a man who controlled empires, but today he was leaving behind everything he thought was safe. Just a few days in Qatar, he murmured, unaware that absence would unravel everything. Isabella stood at the mansion gate, her elegant dress fluttering in the California breeze. Her smile was calm, but her eyes flickered with unease. She clasped a delicate necklace in her hand, something Adrian had gifted her years ago. There was a hesitation in her stance, a tiny pause that Adrian didn't notice. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it would matter more than either of them could imagine. Ethan, their teenage son, rolled his eyes as Adrian leaned down to ruffle his hair. "Behave while I'm gone," Adrian said, voice firm but tinged with warmth. Ethan smirked, nodding half-heartedly. Teenagers rarely take warnings seriously, and Adrian had learned this the hard way. Still, he left with confidence. After all, what could possibly go wrong in a house he owned like a fortress? Marcus Flynn, Adrian's longtime assistant, held the last suitcase. Loyal, professional, and always meticulous, Marcus gave Adrian a respectful nod. He had everything under control, or so Adrian thought. Every meeting, every transaction, every detail of the mansion was Marcus's responsibility when Adrian was away. The billionaire trusted him completely. The private jet waited, its engines humming softly. Adrian took one last glance at California's city skyline, golden under the setting sun. He felt a twinge of pride. This was his world, his domain, and nothing could touch him. As he climbed the steps and stepped into the cabin, he had no idea the storm that awaited him at home. As the plane lifted off, Isabella waved until Adrian disappeared into the clouds. The mansion behind her was silent, almost too quiet. The pool shimmered under the dying sun, the gates swung slightly in the wind, and somewhere in the shadows, secrets were already stirring. Adrian's absence had begun, and with it, a chain of events no billionaire could foresee. A billionaire leaving home for just a few days. What could go wrong? But sometimes, the greatest storms begin not in the boardroom, but behind closed doors. Stay with me, because when Adrian returns, nothing will ever be the same. The mansion was silent, too silent. The grand chandelier in the foyer shimmered in the late afternoon light, but the usual hum of activity was gone. Ethan had already slipped out to meet friends, leaving the halls eerily empty. Isabella wandered the rooms in her high heels, her soft footsteps echoing like whispers, as though the house itself was holding its breath. A faint sound came from the library, a creak of wood, a whisper of movement. Isabella paused, her heart skipping. She glanced toward the heavy oak doors, but saw nothing. She shook her head and moved on, dismissing it as imagination. But somewhere in the mansion, someone or something was already stirring. Meanwhile, upstairs, the security cameras flickered. The mansion's state-of-the-art system usually recorded every corner, every corridor. But tonight, random static interrupted the feed. Tiny glitches appeared on screens that had never faltered before. Adrian, miles away, would have been proud of the tech, but someone was already finding ways around it. Ethan's rebellious streak grew bolder by the hour. He crept out to meet his friends, skateboard under one arm, hoodie drawn over his head. The gates, left unlocked in his absence, swung slightly with the evening breeze. He laughed softly, unaware of how precarious the evening truly was, his mischievous grin masking the tension building inside the house. Isabella retreated to the master bedroom, her mind racing. Something about the mansion felt off. A picture frame on the wall was slightly crooked, a book out of place, as though someone had walked these halls with a purpose. She forced herself to relax, sipping wine from a crystal glass, but the unease lingered, gnawing at her. In the attic, an unknown figure moved quietly. Olivia James had already infiltrated the mansion days before Adrian left. Every movement was deliberate, calculated, silent. She knew the layout, knew the cameras, and most importantly, she knew that Adrian's absence was the perfect opportunity to strike. Yet her true motives remained hidden, like a dark secret waiting to explode. The mansion seemed empty, but shadows don't tell the whole story. Who is watching, and what secrets are being whispered behind these doors? Keep watching, because what happens tonight will change everything Adrian thought he knew. The mansion's library smelled of aged books and polished wood. Isabella moved quietly between the shelves, her fingers grazing the leather-bound volumes. She wasn't alone. A soft rustle from behind a hidden partition made her pause. Olivia emerged, calm, poised, and with a mysterious file clutched in her hands. "You didn't think he'd notice, did you?" Olivia whispered, a hint of challenge in her tone. Isabella's hands trembled slightly as she accepted the file. Her heart raced, not from fear, but anticipation. This was bigger than Adrian's absence. This was about power, control, and secrets that could shift everything. She glanced toward the hallway, ensuring no one could see them, then leaned closer to Olivia. "Are you sure this will work?" she whispered. Olivia's eyes glinted with intelligence. "It has to. The timing is perfect. Adrian's away, Marcus is busy covering the cameras, and Ethan, well, he's a distraction we can use." She paused, her gaze piercing Isabella. "But if anything goes wrong, it's all on you." Isabella swallowed hard, realizing just how high the stakes were. Meanwhile, Ethan was oblivious upstairs, laughing with friends over a video game console. The sound of his laughter echoed faintly down the halls, masking the quiet conspiracy taking shape below. Isabella felt a pang of guilt, but pushed it aside. The mission had to come first. The family's empire, her life, depended on it. Isabella and Olivia spread out papers and documents across the large library table. Charts, emails, financial spreadsheets, and photographs littered the polished wood. Each piece was a key to understanding Adrian's empire and perhaps undermining it. Isabella's mind raced as she connected the dots, realizing that she was now part of something far bigger than she had ever imagined. A sudden noise made Isabella jump. The sound of footsteps on marble floors echoed faintly from the foyer. Panic surged. Had someone heard them? Olivia's eyes narrowed. "Stay calm. It's probably just Marcus checking the security systems. Keep going." Isabella nodded, though her pulse raced. Every second felt like a countdown toward a revelation that could change everything. Secrets in a billionaire's mansion are dangerous enough, but when the people closest to you are hiding them, trust becomes a luxury. What would you do if the person you loved most wasn't who you thought they were? Comment below. What do you think Isabella is planning? Ethan laughed recklessly, skateboard under one arm, weaving through the empty streets of their California neighborhood. He thought it was harmless fun, until a photographer lurking in the shadows snapped a series of photos that would end up everywhere. His grin froze when he realized the camera had captured more than just a skateboarding stunt. It showed him sneaking out, alone, past security cameras, and out of the mansion. Back in Qatar, Adrian's phone buzzed incessantly. Texts, emails, notifications, front-page news alerts flashing across the screen. His stomach tightened as he scrolled. Billionaire's son caught sneaking out. Chaos at Cole Mansion. The headlines painted Ethan as reckless, irresponsible, and ungrateful. Adrian's carefully controlled world felt like it was slipping through his fingers. Isabella paced the mansion hallways, holding a tablet. Each new notification felt like a thunderclap. The scandal spread fast. Social media amplified it, gossip blogs dissected it, and investors began sending anxious messages. Her carefully laid plans with Olivia suddenly had an added complication. The family's reputation was unraveling before any of their moves could be executed. Ethan, oblivious to the scale of the fallout, returned home that night. His casual entrance triggered the mansion's security alarms. Isabella glared at him, frustration mixing with fear. "Do you even realize what you've done?" she hissed. Ethan shrugged, trying to appear indifferent, but the weight of his mistake began to sink in as he saw the tension in her eyes. Meanwhile, Marcus watched from the surveillance room. He leaned back in his chair, expression unreadable. He had anticipated the distraction Ethan's antics would cause, and in that moment, he saw the opportunity to push forward with his own secret agenda. Every chaotic headline, Every flashing notification was a tool in a game Adrian didn't yet know was being played. Adrian's private jet hit turbulence as the storm in his personal life mirrored the one in the skies. He gritted his teeth, mind racing. How could one night of teenage rebellion spiral into a media storm? And more importantly, what else had happened in his absence that he hadn't yet discovered? A single mistake can change everything in a billionaire's world, but what if it wasn't just a mistake? Could this scandal be the first sign of a much bigger betrayal? Comment below. What do you think Ethan doesn't know? Marcus sat in the mansion's dimly lit office, the hum of servers and computers filling the silence. Adrian's financial records glowed on the multiple screens before him, sensitive documents at his fingertips. No one suspected that the man who had served Adrian for over a decade was already making moves that could cripple the empire. Every keystroke was deliberate, a step in a plan he had carefully orchestrated long before the billionaire left for Qatar. He connected a small USB device, quickly erasing security footage and financial files. Each deletion felt like a knife twisting in trust, a betrayal invisible to everyone else. Marcus smirked slightly, confident in the knowledge that no one could trace his actions immediately. He wasn't reckless, he was patient, meticulous, and ruthless. Meanwhile, Isabella's phone buzzed. She had been monitoring Adrian's messages, waiting for news of the Qatar trip. Her connection with Olivia allowed them to coordinate moves, but even she didn't fully understand Marcus's role in this unfolding chaos. Unseen, unnoticed, the assistant's quiet sabotage was a perfect complement to their own secret schemes. In the surveillance room, Marcus reviewed security footage with a practiced eye. Ethan's rebellious escapades had been captured, but he had already deleted the angles that could expose his interference. Every blurred frame, every static interruption, was carefully engineered. The mansion seemed normal to anyone else, but Marcus knew the truth. Chaos was being sown quietly, methodically. Even Olivia sensed the shift. Hidden upstairs in the attic, she watched Marcus's movements through a small camera feed she had installed secretly. He was unknowingly advancing her own plans, yet she remained cautious. Trust in this house was a dangerous illusion, and she wasn't about to be the one burned. By the time Adrian's flight touched down in California, the mansion was already a web of unseen betrayal. Files were missing, secrets were shifting, and the people he trusted most were now moving against him in ways he couldn't yet see. The billionaire, who had built an empire on precision and control, was about to discover just how fragile it all truly was. Trust is a dangerous currency in a world where loyalty can be bought or broken. Who would you suspect first if the people closest to you were plotting behind your back? Comment below. Who do you think is the biggest threat in Adrian's mansion? Adrian's mansion, a fortress of wealth and security, had always been a place where every detail was accounted for. But tonight, someone moved inside its walls like a ghost. Olivia James, mysterious and composed, had infiltrated the house days before Adrian left. Her presence was seamless, almost invisible, yet her eyes missed nothing. She had a purpose, a mission, and nothing would stop her, not even the man who owned the empire. She moved silently through the mansion, noting the subtle disturbances left by Marcus and Ethan. Each shadow, each creak, each flicker of the security cameras was a piece of a puzzle she was piecing together. The mansion was not just a home, it was a chessboard, and tonight, Olivia intended to make her move. In the grand living room, she paused. The furniture gleamed under dim lights, paintings hung in perfect symmetry, but she could sense the tension in the air. A family's secret lingered here, unspoken yet palpable. Olivia traced her fingers over the edge of the mahogany table, contemplating how to exploit what she had discovered. Meanwhile, upstairs, Ethan's laughter echoed faintly, oblivious to the intruder moving silently below. Olivia smirked, noting how distracted the family was. She had studied their habits, predicted their routines, and now she was ready to act. Every move was deliberate, every second a calculated step closer to her goal. Isabella, unaware that Olivia was already inside the mansion, continued her own secret operations. Yet fate had intertwined them. The two women were moving along parallel paths, each with hidden agendas that would collide sooner or later. Olivia's presence was a silent storm waiting to erupt, a secret that could unravel the family before Adrian even stepped through the front door. By midnight, Olivia had accessed files hidden deep within the mansion's secure network, uncovering secrets even Marcus hadn't touched. Her motives remained unclear, friend or foe, but one thing was certain: Adrian's return would not go as planned. The empire he trusted, the family he loved, was already in the grip of unseen forces. A stranger in a billionaire's mansion, silent, unseen, and unstoppable. But is she here to help or destroy? What would you do if someone you didn't know was controlling the fate of your family? Comment below. Who do you think Olivia really is? The private jet touched down on California soil, engines humming low as Adrian adjusted his cufflinks. He stepped onto the tarmac, sunglasses shielding his eyes, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed him. Something about this return felt different. He couldn't yet place it, but instinct told him the mansion he had left so controlled and pristine might no longer be the sanctuary he imagined. As he approached the mansion, Adrian's gaze swept across the familiar grounds. At first glance, everything looked perfect: the gates, the pool, the manicured lawns. But a subtle detail caught his sharp eye: a small door left ajar, a garden sculpture slightly tilted. The billionaire's mind raced. Who had been here? And more importantly, what had happened in his absence? Inside, the foyer smelled faintly of something unfamiliar. The chandelier reflected the setting sun differently than before, casting unusual shadows on the polished floor. Adrian's footsteps echoed as he moved cautiously through the halls, hand brushing against the smooth marble banister. The mansion, his empire, seemed alive, watching, hiding secrets behind every corner. He stopped abruptly in the living room. Items were slightly out of place. Books on the shelves rotated. A decorative vase shifted. These were small details, but Adrian noticed everything. Every billionaire develops a sixth sense for disruptions, and his told him immediately. Someone had been inside while he was away, moving through his world like a phantom. Isabella appeared, elegant yet nervous, holding a glass of wine. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Adrian's gaze sharpened, scanning her expressions. "Is everything okay?" he asked, voice calm but firm. Isabella hesitated, then forced a nod, but the tension between them was palpable. He knew she was hiding something, though what remained a mystery. Upstairs, Ethan peeked from his room, trying to appear casual, but Adrian's eyes found him immediately. The teenager froze, caught between fear and defiance. Adrian's mind catalogued every clue, every movement, realizing that the mansion he once controlled was now a labyrinth of secrets and potential betrayals. Adrian returned expecting home, but instead found a mansion full of secrets, a family hiding truths, and shadows moving where they shouldn't. If you were Adrian, what would you do first? Comment below. What's the first secret you'd uncover? Adrian closed the front door behind him, the sound echoing through the mansion like a gunshot. He turned to face Isabella first, his gaze sharp and unyielding. "Tell me everything," he demanded, voice low but commanding. Isabella's calm composure wavered for a split second, her eyes darting toward the shadows. She hesitated, then forced a nod, silently admitting she was keeping secrets. Ethan appeared from the staircase, casual at first, then faltering when he saw Adrian's expression. He stammered, realizing there was no easy escape. Adrian's piercing eyes pinned him in place. "Do you understand the chaos you caused?" Every rebellious act, every slip-up, had escalated far beyond mere teenage mischief. Adrian then turned toward Marcus, whose usual calm demeanor now faltered slightly under the billionaire's scrutiny. Marcus straightened, attempting professionalism, but Adrian could see through the facade. Every subtle shift in posture, every fleeting glance betrayed more than words could. Adrian knew something significant had been done in his absence, and Marcus was hiding it. The confrontation escalated as Adrian demanded explanations. Isabella's answers were vague, protective of her own secrets, while Ethan tried to shrug it off with feigned innocence. Marcus offered measured responses, But the gaps in his story were glaring. Adrian's mind raced, piecing together the inconsistencies. Trust, he realized, was no longer guaranteed in the people he relied on most. A sudden noise upstairs caught everyone's attention, a faint creak, almost imperceptible. Adrian froze, realizing the mansion had more intruders than he imagined. His instinct screamed. Someone else was moving within the walls, someone who didn't belong. Shadows shifted subtly, revealing that the secrets he was confronting were only the surface. Adrian's voice cut through the tension. Enough games. Someone is lying, and I will find out who. Every secret, every hidden move, you will all answer. Silence fell, punctuated only by the distant hum of security systems. Every member of the household understood the gravity. This confrontation was only the beginning. Secrets don't survive in a house where everyone is watching and everyone is lying. If you were Adrian, who would you confront first? Comment below. Who do you trust least in this mansion? Adrian moved silently through the mansion, his eyes scanning every corner. The polished floors reflected the late evening light, and every creak of the hardwood seemed amplified. Something was off. Books slightly out of place, a painting crooked, and a faint scent of perfume that didn't belong to Isabella. The mansion, his sanctuary, had been invaded in ways he hadn't imagined. He crouched near a hidden drawer in the library, discovering letters that had been moved. Some were unsigned, others contained hints of financial irregularities. Adrian's pulse quickened as he realized these weren't just careless mistakes, they were deliberate, coded messages meant to hide something significant. On the grand desk, a laptop lay open, its screen showing partially erased security footage. Adrian frowned, recognizing angles of the mansion he knew well. Certain rooms had been digitally manipulated to hide intruders' movements. Whoever had done this had deep knowledge of the mansion's security, and that realization made Adrian uneasy. Ethan, upstairs, peeked down at Adrian, guilt and anxiety visible on his face. "Dad," he started, but Adrian's glare cut him off. Every glance, every movement was now under scrutiny. Adrian understood that even innocent mistakes could be used as cover for greater schemes. Adrian's search led him to a concealed panel behind a large painting. He pressed a hidden latch and revealed a safe, slightly ajar. Inside were files, USB drives, and photographs, evidence of manipulations, plans, and hidden meetings he hadn't authorized. The extent of the betrayal hit him. Someone had been operating within his walls, plotting against him, and they had waited for his absence to act. In a remote corner, Olivia watched silently through one of the hacked cameras. She had been tracking Adrian's investigation, noting every clue he uncovered. Her presence had been carefully masked, but now, as Adrian pieced together the truth, her plan advanced subtly. The mansion had become her stage, and Adrian, unknowingly, was the key player in a game he didn't yet fully understand. The walls of a billionaire's mansion hold more than wealth. They hold secrets, lies, and betrayals waiting to be uncovered. What would you do if you found evidence that someone close was plotting against you? Comment below. What would your first move be? The mansion gates opened with a slow, deliberate groan. Detective Ramirez stepped out of the sleek black SUV, trench coat brushing his polished shoes. His gaze swept over the property with precision, reading the mansion like a puzzle. He wasn't here for ordinary disturbances. He had been tipped about unusual activity inside, and he knew that in a house this wealthy, appearances were rarely what they seemed. Inside, Adrian met Ramirez in the foyer, tension crackling in the air. "Detective, thanks for coming," Adrian said, voice steady but cold. Ramirez's eyes scanned him for signs of anxiety, but Adrian's controlled demeanor only hinted at the storm brewing inside. They shook hands, but the grip was firm, a silent acknowledgement that this investigation would not be ordinary. "Tell me everything from the beginning," Ramirez instructed, leaning slightly forward. Adrian recounted the Qatar trip, Ethan's scandal, and the disturbances he had discovered. Ramirez listened silently, eyes narrowing at each detail, piecing together the pattern. A mansion this opulent was a fortress, yet clearly, Someone had breached it in ways that were both clever and dangerous. Meanwhile, Isabella lingered in the background, subtle anxiety masking her elegance. Ramirez's presence unsettled her more than Adrian's scrutiny. Every secret she had concealed, every plan she had executed, was now at risk of exposure. She sipped wine nervously, forcing a calm exterior while her mind raced for solutions. Upstairs, Ethan watched from the stairwell, fidgeting. Ramirez's reputation as a meticulous, no-nonsense detective preceded him. The teenager knew that every lie, every misstep, was under the detective's radar. This wasn't a warning. It was a clear signal that the consequences of his actions were escalating beyond parental discipline. Detective Ramirez turned toward Marcus, whose usual composed demeanor now showed slight cracks. "Mr. Flynn, you've been managing the estate in Adrian's absence. I need access to all systems, records, and footage," Ramirez said, tone sharp but calm. Marcus nodded, internal calculation flickering across his face. The law was now involved, and with it came the threat of exposure he hadn't yet anticipated. When secrets meet the law, every move matters, and no one can hide forever. If you were Adrian, what would you reveal first to the detective? Comment below. What's the first clue you'd show? Detective Ramirez had barely settled in when subtle signs of deceit began to emerge. Files were missing, camera angles were obstructed, and small inconsistencies in Marcus's account didn't go unnoticed. The detective's instincts told him someone in the mansion was playing a dangerous double game, and that the house's true story was hidden beneath layers of polished perfection. Olivia moved silently through the shadows, observing the unfolding drama. She had been waiting for this exact moment. Adrian distracted, the detective involved, and Marcus unaware of her presence. Every secret she had gathered, every manipulation she had executed, now aligned perfectly with her plan. She watched, calculating, knowing that one well-timed move could change everything. Isabella's calm facade cracked under the pressure. Ramirez's presence forced her to reconsider every move she had made with Olivia. Questions began creeping into her mind. Had she underestimated Marcus? Could Adrian uncover her secrets first? Fear and ambition mixed dangerously in her thoughts as she sipped her wine, trying to mask her inner turmoil. Marcus, normally so precise, felt the detective's scrutiny tighten like a vice. Every choice he had made while Adrian was away now seemed vulnerable. Ramirez's gaze pierced him, leaving no room for hidden agendas. Marcus realized that the mansion's chaos was no longer under his control. The law had entered, and with it, the threat of exposure. Meanwhile, Ethan tried to stay out of the conflict, but his previous recklessness and the scandal that made headlines placed him squarely in the middle of the investigation. Detective Ramirez's questions about timelines and movements made the teenager squirm, each answer revealing small cracks in the family's armor. Every lie, every misstep, was now a thread the detective could pull. As the night deepened, Olivia made her first overt move. Slipping into Marcus's office, she inserted a hidden USB device into his system, quietly downloading files that could compromise him completely. Marcus, oblivious to the intrusion, continued to manipulate the mansion's chaos, unknowingly falling into her trap. Every hidden agenda was converging, and the first domino was about to fall. In a mansion of billionaires, the shadows are full of secrets, and everyone is playing a game. If you were Adrian, who would you suspect first, and who would you watch closely? Comment below. Whose hidden agenda worries you most? Detective Ramirez called everyone into the grand living room, his eyes scanning each face carefully. "The evidence is clear. Some of you have been hiding things," he said, voice calm but heavy. Silence fell over the mansion like a thick fog. Even the chandelier seemed to hang a little lower, casting shadows that mirrored the tension in the room. Adrian's jaw tightened. He knew this was the moment the walls of secrecy would begin to crumble. Ramirez held up a tablet displaying the security footage Olivia had failed to erase completely. Movements, hidden entries, and suspicious activity were all visible. Marcus's confident mask faltered as the evidence revealed his manipulations, deleted files, tampered footage, and unauthorized access to Adrian's financial systems. The truth of his betrayal hit him like a cold gust of wind. Isabella carefully maintained composure began to crack as Ramirez presented documents connecting her to secret meetings and financial irregularities orchestrated with Olivia. Her face paled slightly. Adrian's gaze bore into her, a mix of disappointment, anger, and disbelief. The wife he thought he knew was now unmasked in subtle, yet undeniable ways. Ethan shrank back, guilt etched across his face. The detective presented photos and timestamps of his public scandal, the skateboard incident, and other reckless behavior. It became clear that while he had been reckless, he had also been an unknowing pawn in larger schemes orchestrated by Marcus and Olivia. Fear replaced defiance as he realized the true depth of the chaos he had been swept into. Olivia, watching from her hidden vantage point, clenched her jaw. Ramirez's investigation had exposed some of her moves. She hadn't anticipated how quickly the detective would piece together the puzzle. Every hidden file and manipulated security feed now risked revealing her. But she remained calm, formulating the next step, knowing that exposure didn't necessarily mean defeat. Adrian stepped forward, voice steady but commanding. I trusted every one of you. And yet, behind my back, alliances were formed, rules were broken, and my family's safety was compromised. The room held its breath. The mansion, his fortress, his empire, had become a stage for betrayal, and tonight, the players were finally revealed. Secrets have a way of coming to light, and when they do, nothing is ever the same. If you were Adrian, what would be your first move after discovering all these betrayals? Comment below, who would you confront first? Olivia stepped out of the shadows, her presence undeniable now. She had been quietly observing Adrian's investigation, anticipating every move, every clue uncovered by Ramirez. Her calm, elegant exterior masked a mind plotting multiple steps ahead. Tonight, she intended to reveal her hand, not as a victim of circumstance, but as a player who had already shaped events from behind the scenes. Adrian's gaze locked on her immediately. You've been here all along, orchestrating everything? His voice carried a mix of disbelief and fury. Olivia smiled faintly, serene yet challenging. I didn't orchestrate chaos. I revealed the truth hidden by lies, she said. Every word was deliberate, every syllable a challenge to Adrian's control. She moved closer, glancing briefly at Isabella and Marcus. They've all been playing roles, but I've seen the real motives. You left, Adrian, and everyone filled the vacuum with their own ambitions. Her words pierced the room like a knife, exposing alliances, greed, and deceit. Adrian realized Olivia's plan was bigger than just observation. She had been collecting leverage, waiting for the right moment to act. Isabella swallowed, realizing Olivia had outmaneuvered her. Marcus's confident facade faltered as he finally grasped that his schemes were no longer secret. Ethan, caught in the middle, shifted nervously, understanding that Olivia's control over the situation surpassed even Adrian's awareness. The mansion had become a chessboard, and Olivia was the grandmaster. Detective Ramirez remained calm, observing Olivia's movements with a keen eye. Her presence complicated the investigation, but also clarified motives. He realized that she had manipulated events not just to expose, but to control outcomes in subtle ways. Her strategy was precise, leaving only Adrian with the power to challenge her next move. Olivia's voice softened, almost conspiratorial. I didn't come here to destroy. I came here to reveal the truth, and to show you who your real allies and enemies are. Adrian's mind raced. The empire he thought he controlled was a fragile web of deception, and Olivia's revelation had pulled the first threads. Everything he had trusted, family, staff, even his own instincts, needed reevaluation. Sometimes the person you think is invisible is the one controlling everything. If you were Adrian, how would you respond to Olivia's revelation? Comment below. What would your first move be to regain control? Adrian gathered everyone in the grand living room, the air thick with unspoken accusations. Isabella's face was pale, Marcus's jaw tight, and Ethan fidgeted nervously. Olivia stood silently in the corner, observing every expression with calculated patience. Adrian's voice cut through the tension. The lies end tonight. Everyone will tell the truth, or face consequences. Isabella spoke first, voice trembling. I only tried to protect the family. Her excuse fell flat under Adrian's piercing gaze. Every word sounded hollow, revealing that her attempts to manipulate the mansion had only deepened the divide. Adrian realized her loyalty was conditional, based on ambition rather than love. Marcus, usually composed, faltered as Adrian's scrutiny intensified. I managed things while you were away, Adrian. I only did what I thought was best, he said, voice tight. Adrian's eyes narrowed, recognizing that Marcus's management had crossed into betrayal. The mansion's order had been disrupted by those he trusted most. Ethan, caught in the middle, tried to defend himself. I didn't mean for anything to go wrong. His voice cracked, betraying fear and guilt. Adrian's gaze softened briefly. He knew Ethan had been manipulated, but the teenager's actions had still contributed to the chaos. Adrian realized the family's unity was fragile, held together by appearances rather than trust. Olivia finally stepped forward. This family isn't divided because of one person. It's been fractured for years. I'm just revealing what's been hidden. Her calm authority silenced the room. Adrian's mind raced. She wasn't just an observer. She was a catalyst, exposing every hidden agenda. Her intervention forced the family to confront truths they had long avoided. The mansion seemed smaller suddenly, every room echoing with mistrust. Adrian realized that restoring control would require more than anger. It would demand strategy, careful observation, and possibly alliances he had never considered. The family he thought he understood was now a puzzle of secrets, lies, and ambitions pulling them in different directions. Adrian retreated to his private study, the weight of the revelations pressing on his shoulders. He needed a plan, a way to untangle the web of betrayals and regain control of his mansion. As he reviewed the evidence Ramirez had compiled, one name stood out: Ethan. The teenager had been reckless, yes, but he was also a potential ally if approached carefully. Adrian realized that trust could be rebuilt strategically, even in a house full of deception. Ethan hesitated outside the study door, unsure if his father wanted to see him. Adrian gestured him in, eyes sharp but not unkind. We need to work together. I can't do this alone. Ethan nodded slowly, realizing for the first time that his father saw more than just his mistakes. He saw potential, and perhaps redemption. Meanwhile, Olivia continued to monitor the mansion, unaware that Adrian had begun forming alliances. She had underestimated the subtle bonds that still existed within the family. Every move she made had been calculated, yet she had assumed that fear and mistrust would completely paralyze them. Adrian's quiet strategy began to shift the balance. Marcus, increasingly anxious under Ramirez's scrutiny, began to show cracks in his armor. Adrian noticed his hesitation and realized Marcus could be turned, not as a friend, but as a tool to expose Olivia's plans. Strategic manipulation was now as vital as direct confrontation. The house had become a battlefield of intellect, patience, and perception. Adrian and Ethan reviewed the mansion's security system together, discovering overlooked footage that suggested Isabella and Olivia had met secretly. The revelation made Adrian's jaw tighten, yet he remained calm. He whispered to Ethan, "We'll need to play our cards carefully. Timing is everything." For the first time, father and son shared a quiet, strategic alliance against the hidden threats within their own home. Olivia's confidence began to waver slightly as subtle hints of Adrian's maneuvering reached her. She realized that she had underestimated the family's ability to adapt, especially when bonds, even fractured ones, could be used to her disadvantage. Her strategy remained strong, but the stakes had grown higher. A confrontation was inevitable, and the first moves had already been made. Alliances can be hidden, trust can be rebuilt, but the stakes are higher than ever. If you were Adrian, who would you bring into your secret alliance? And how would you use it? Comment below. Whose loyalty would you bet on? Adrian gathered Olivia and Isabella in the grand living room, the air thick with tension. He stood tall, exuding authority and control, while the women faced him, their expressions a mixture of defiance and caution. "The time for games is over," he said, voice steady but carrying the weight of command. Every word was a challenge, every pause a test of their reactions. Olivia's eyes sparkled with controlled amusement. "You think you can stop what's already in motion?" she asked, her voice calm, almost teasing. Adrian's gaze didn't waver. "I don't need to stop it. I just need to control the next move," he replied, signaling that the battle of wits had officially begun. Isabella shifted uneasily. "Adrian, maybe we should talk this through," she suggested, trying to soften the tension. But Adrian saw the hesitation in her eyes. She was as complicit as Olivia in the chaos, and words alone would not undo the web of deception they had spun. "Talking isn't enough. Actions speak louder than excuses," he replied, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. Detective Ramirez observed quietly from the corner, analyzing every gesture, every glance, every micro-expression. He knew that this confrontation was more than a family dispute. It was a calculated struggle for control. Olivia's subtle manipulations clashed against Adrian's newfound strategic alliance with Ethan, and the room was a battlefield of intellect and intent. Adrian took a step closer to Olivia, his eyes locked on hers. "I've seen the files, the movements, the lies. You think you've been invisible, but I know your game," he said, voice low and commanding. Olivia's smirk faltered slightly. She realized he had anticipated her moves far better than she expected. The first cracks in her control were beginning to show. Ethan, standing beside Adrian, nodded subtly, signaling his support. Adrian's alliance with his son had already shifted the dynamic. Olivia's careful planning now faced unexpected opposition. Isabella looked between them, panic flickering across her face. The mansion's atmosphere felt electric, charged with tension, uncertainty, and the impending storm of revelations. The first confrontation has begun, but in a mansion full of secrets, who will make the next move? If you were Adrian, what would you do now, and who would you trust the least? Comment below with your strategy. The room fell silent, tension so thick it was almost suffocating. Adrian had thought he understood who the enemy was: Olivia, Isabella, maybe even Marcus. But the next revelation came like a lightning strike. Ethan, his own son, had secretly communicated with Olivia during the chaos, trying to protect himself while navigating the dangerous currents of betrayal. Adrian's jaw tightened as shock and anger mixed in his chest. Ethan's eyes brimmed with guilt. "Dad, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I didn't know who else to trust," he confessed, voice trembling. Adrian's mind raced. Trust had been broken, alliances tested, and now even the son he had just aligned with had faltered. The mansion, his fortress, had become a web of treachery, even within the family. Olivia's calm demeanor shifted into a victorious smirk. She had anticipated this moment, planting seeds of doubt and temptation that even Adrian hadn't foreseen. Her influence had subtly manipulated Ethan, ensuring the ultimate betrayal would shake Adrian to his core. The power she held in the mansion had never been more evident. Adrian's eyes narrowed, fury simmering beneath the surface. "You all think this is a game, but this house, this family, is my life. And I will not let anyone tear it apart," he said, voice low and dangerous. The room seemed to vibrate with tension, each word acting as a spark ready to ignite a storm. Isabella, watching silently, finally spoke, her voice shaky. "Adrian, maybe we've all made mistakes. Maybe the mansion isn't what it used to be." But her words rang hollow. Adrian understood now. Everyone had their own ambitions, their own fears, and their own betrayals. The mansion was no longer just a home. It was a battlefield, and trust was a weapon no one could wield safely. Detective Ramirez, having observed silently, finally intervened. "Enough. Betrayal cuts deep, but now is the time for action. We cannot fix the past, but we can control what happens next." His words brought a temporary pause, yet the tension remained electric. Every player in the mansion knew that the ultimate confrontation was imminent. The final moves of the game were about to be made. The ultimate betrayal has been revealed, but in a house of secrets, nothing ends easily. "If you were Adrian, what would your next move be?" And who would you confront first? Comment below. Who do you trust, if anyone? Adrian stood in the grand living room, facing everyone: Olivia, Isabella, Marcus, and Ethan. The mansion seemed smaller, the walls echoing with the weight of betrayal. He took a deep breath, voice steady, commanding. This ends tonight. No more lies, no more manipulation. Every secret, every betrayal will be revealed and resolved. The air vibrated with anticipation, as if the mansion itself were holding its breath. Olivia's smirk faded as Adrian's words struck true. She realized that subtle manipulation and careful planning were no longer enough. Adrian had regained control, strengthened by his alliance with Ethan and the detective support. The chessboard had shifted. Her pieces were now exposed. Marcus stepped forward hesitantly, trying to justify his actions. Adrian, I only tried to maintain order while you were away. Adrian shook his head, voice firm. Order? You exploited my absence for your gain. Now it ends. You will face the consequences of your choices. Marcus's shoulders slumped, realizing the empire he tried to control was no longer under his command. Isabella looked at Adrian, guilt and fear visible in her eyes. I didn't know how far it would go. Adrian's gaze softened momentarily, then hardened. Intentions don't erase actions. You made choices, Isabella, and now you must face them. The mansion's tension surged. Nothing could undo the consequences now. Ethan, standing beside Adrian, finally spoke. Dad, I made a mistake, but I want to fix it. Adrian placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Then start by helping me protect what's ours, and never let fear or manipulation control you again. The father-son alliance solidified, becoming a pivotal force in the final confrontation. Olivia, realizing the momentum had shifted, attempted a final move, revealing a secret file that could destabilize Adrian's empire. But Ramirez intercepted, confiscating the evidence before it could cause damage. Her plan was thwarted, and the mansion's remaining secrets were finally under control. Olivia's smirk disappeared, replaced by a reluctant acknowledgement of defeat. Adrian addressed the room, voice firm and commanding. The mansion stands not just on wealth, but on trust, integrity, and accountability. Today, we rebuild, not as enemies, but as a family that knows the cost of secrets. From now on, every action will be transparent, every betrayal accounted for. Relief mixed with lingering tension, but for the first time, control had returned. The storm of betrayal has passed, but every house has its secrets. If you were Adrian, what rules would you set to protect your family and empire next? Comment below. How would you ensure loyalty and trust?